Lieutenant Liana Chen stood at the observation deck of the UNSC Prometheus, her reflection ghosting across the reinforced polymer viewport as the emergency transmission played for the third time. Behind her, James Rodriguez, the ship's chief tactical officer, leaned against the holographic display console with his arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "They're serious," Liana said, though her tone carried more amusement than concern. "The Galactic Council just declared war on humanity." "I heard," James replied, tapping the console to bring up the translated declaration. The hologram shimmered, displaying the pompous visage of High Arbiter Zelthorn, his chitinous mandibles clicking with what the translation matrix labeled as grave authority. 12-member species, unified fleet action, immediate cessation of human expansion into what they're calling regulated zones. Liana turned from the viewport, her dark eyes sparkling with barely contained mirth. "They gave us 48 standard hours to comply." "Generous of them," James said dryly. The reality was almost absurd. The Galactic Council, comprised of species who had achieved faster-than-light travel anywhere from 800 to 2,000 years before humanity, had finally decided that the upstart humans had grown too troublesome, too aggressive, too willing to colonize worlds without the proper applications filed in triplicate with the bureaucratic concordat of stellar allocation. What the Council failed to understand, what their carefully curated databases and millennia of xenoanthropological studies had somehow missed, was the fundamental nature of human warfare. "Have they responded to our request for clarification?" Liana asked, pulling up her own tactical display. James nodded. "Just came through. They're deploying what they call a subjugation armada. Approximately 15,000 vessels, ranging from frigate-class to dreadnought analogs. Expected arrival at the Sol system's heliopause in 72 hours. 15,000. Liana let the number hang in the air. That's almost their entire combined military. Against one species that's been space-capable for less than 2 centuries. James pulled up the fleet composition analysis. Their tactical doctrine is, well, it's something. The analysis was simultaneously fascinating and concerning, not because of the threat it posed, but because of what it revealed about galactic civilization. The Council species had evolved their military structures during an era of what they termed civilized conflict. Wars were ritualized affairs, governed by strict protocols. Fleets met at predetermined coordinates. Battles were conducted with almost ceremonial precision. Victory was determined by which side lost fewer vessels or retreated first, according to established surrender protocols. The concept of total war, of strategic deception, of asymmetric warfare, these were as alien to them as their physiology was to humanity. "They're broadcasting their attack vectors," James said, highlighting the incoming data streams. "Encrypted, but it's barely military grade. I cracked it in 40 minutes. They told us when they're arriving, where they're arriving, and exactly what formations they'll be using," Liana mused. She walked to the tactical table, her fingers dancing across the haptic interface. "It's like they think war is a sporting event." "To them it is." James joined her at the table. The holographic display bloomed with data. Council fleet positions, projected trajectories, formation doctrines spanning thousands of years. "Look at this. The Battle of Kelmarthos, 600 years ago. 2 fleets met, exchanged fire for 3 hours. One side lost 12% of their vessels and retreated. The war was over. Peace negotiations began immediately." Liana pulled up humanity's military history for comparison. The screen flooded with data points. The Punic Wars, the Mongol conquests, World War I, World War II, the proxy conflicts, the corporate wars of the 22nd century, thousands of years of total warfare, strategic bombing, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations, and the fundamental understanding that war was not a game. It was survival. "We should probably inform Fleet Command," James said, though his tone suggested he already knew the response they'd receive. Liana tapped her communication badge. "Chen to Admiral Okonkwo." The Admiral's face appeared in miniature hologram, her expression one of profound weariness mixed with sardonic amusement. "Let me guess, Lieutenant. You've reviewed the Council's war declaration." "Yes, ma'am, they're sending 15,000 vessels." "I'm aware." Okonkwo rubbed her temples. "I've spent the last hour on calls with Earth Command, Mars Defense Grid, and the Jovian shipyards. Do you know what the consensus response has been?" "No, ma'am." Laughter. The Admiral's mouth twitched. Genuine, uncontrolled laughter. The Jupiter Station commander actually had to mute herself. James leaned into the pickup. "Admiral, their tactical doctrine is ceremonial at best, suicide at worst," Okonkwo finished. "I know. We've run the simulations. The defense AI went into what our programmers are calling an error state of excessive advantage. It thought we'd input the data incorrectly." Liana felt a pang of something almost like pity. "They don't know what they're walking into." "No, they don't." The Admiral's expression hardened. "Which is why we're not going to destroy them. New orders are being distributed fleet-wide. When the subjugation armada arrives, we're going to do something the Council has never experienced." "Ma'am?" James asked. "We're going to teach them what human warfare actually looks like. And then we're going to offer them surrender terms so generous they'll spend the next century trying to understand why we didn't annihilate them when we had the chance." Okonkwo's smile was cold. "Sometimes the best way to win a war is to make your enemy realize they never wanted to fight you in the first place." The transmission ended. Liana and James stood in silence, watching the distant stars through the viewport. "They declared war," James said quietly. "And we laughed," Liana agreed, "because they have no idea what war actually means." Somewhere in the dark between stars, an armada approached, confident in their numerical superiority and millennia of tradition. And waiting for them was a species that had turned warfare into an art form, a science, and a nightmare. A species that understood one fundamental truth the galaxy had forgotten. In real war, there are no rules, no ceremonies, and no mercy for those who mistake conflict for spectacle. The Prometheus turned, its engines flaring to life as it moved to join the defensive formation. The lesson was about to begin.